we have all business vocabulary, verbs and nouns that will help you do business in English. So these words are very important because if you want to do business, you need to know some certain verbs and nouns, especially to talk about contemporary issues in business. So I'm going to play the video. It's only 2 minutes. Let's watch the video before we do the lesson.
Hey everybody, it's Jonathan Teacher. Welcome back for another lesson. Learn English fast. Business English. What year was Google launched? Amazon was founded by Jeff Bezos. The corporation is negotiating to acquire the new startup. The two companies agreed to expand their distribution by merging together. Here are the verbs from the video, their definitions, and the noun version of the verb. Launch. Start a new company. The noun of the verb launch is launch. Found. Be the creator of a new company. The noun version of the verb found is founder. Acquire means obtain. The noun of acquire is acquisition. Verb merge means join together and make one. The noun version of the verb merge is merger. Expand means become larger, and the noun of expand is expansion. Google and Amazon are powerful corporations, but new startup companies are being launched often. Can you name one which has been acquired by Google?
Okay, so that is the video for the lesson. And now let's talk about that question. So let's go here. And we have 2 discussion questions to start for today. So are you interested in business? What kind of business interests you? So Tanu Khan, are you interested in business? What kind of business interests you? So, are you interested in business? What kind of business interests you? For example, yes, I am very interested in business. The kind of business that interests me is exports, selling products from my country to another country. For example, there are many kinds of business. There's so many new kinds of businesses. It could be like fruits, vegetables, gardening, farming, stuff like that. It could be technology. There's just so many kinds of businesses, especially with the internet. And Tanu, are you interested in business? Are you interested?
I'm interested. Yeah. I'm interested in business.
What kind of business?
Interested in export business.
Oh, nice. What do you export? Or what kind of export? What product?
Clothes export. From my country to another country.
Okay. What other countries do you export to? What countries outside of India?
Like Dubai and Arabia.
Oh, okay. That's really cool. That's great. Google, number 2, Google has acquired many startup companies. Can you name any? Can you name any companies that Google has acquired? So, does anybody know any companies that Google has acquired? Any startup companies? Hi, Perla, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we just started the lesson, and here's one question. Maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. Google has acquired many startup companies. Can you name any?
I don't really know.
It's a hard question. We're actually gonna learn about it. Do you know this verb, Perla? Acquired. Do you know this verb?
I think it's like to get, like
Yeah.
to obtain.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. So acquire, it's a very common word in business English, and it means, basically it means to obtain or to get something, to buy, right? So in this context, it means to buy, to purchase. So do you know have you ever heard of Waze? Waze, it's a navigation app. Have you ever heard of this company, Waze? Maybe you have. Google purchased Waze. It's a navigation app, and they use it on Google Maps. So this is the name of a company. One other company that Google has acquired is YouTube. When Google acquired YouTube, YouTube was a small company with less than 100 employees. It had less than 100 employees when it was acquired by Google. So if you see this word acquire, it means, in a business context, it means to purchase or to buy out a company. So for example, somebody starts a tech company or an app, a really popular app, and the app is very good, and then Google learns about this app or this new company, and Google says, we want to acquire your company, or we want to acquire your app so we can use it in our services. It will help us. And then Google makes a large offer of money, and they purchase these companies. So that takes us to the comprehension part of the lesson. And the noun version of acquire is acquisition. So here's the comprehension practice, which uses the target vocabulary from the lesson. So in the video lesson, there were 5 or 6 terms. They were verbs and they're nouns. So we're gonna look at a short reading article. I'm going to read the article to you, and you can just listen. And after that, we will try to answer these 3 questions. Here are the 3 questions. Number 1, what was Google's biggest acquisition? Number 2, explain Google's strategy in acquiring startups, their strategy in acquiring startups. And number 3, how much has Google spent on its top 10 acquisitions? So don't forget, a startup is a new company, usually a technology company or an app that somebody starts. It's a very small company, but it has a great product. And then a bigger company, a bigger corporation like Google comes along and buys it. So here is the article, and just listen. If you see a word you do not understand, that's okay. There's no problem if you see a new word. Don't worry, we can talk about that after. But just try to understand what you're listening to. You're going to see a lot of the target vocabulary from my video lesson, and also a lot of good business vocabulary. And it's excellent to analyze business texts and to read articles about business. This is very helpful for you. So I'm going to read it to you. It'll take 3 or 4 minutes, and just listen. So here we are, CBI Insights, infographic, Google's biggest acquisitions. As Google announces its pending $2.1 billion purchase of wearables manufacturer Fitbit, we visualize the tech giant's top acquisitions. Over 12 years ago, tech giant Google announced its largest acquisition since it incorporated in a Menlo Park garage, paying $1.7 billion for YouTube, a video platform that at the time had fewer than 100 employees. Since then, Google's checkbook has opened wide, as we highlighted in our deep dive into Google's M&A strategy, with some 250 acquisitions announced over the past decade. Here is the infographic. Using the data, we made a visual timeline of the largest acquisitions in the company's history. See the top 10 below. So here's Google's acquisition timeline. On the y-axis, we have the valuation of acquired company in billions, and we have the acquisition date starting back in 2001 and continuing until now. Here's their timeline. What stands out to me? Look at Motorola. It's by far the most expensive acquisition. It happened about 8 years ago, and it's by far their biggest acquisition here. There's Fitbit, Looker, HTC, Nest, AdMob. YouTube is way back here. YouTube was a long time ago, and look how small of an acquisition YouTube ended up being. So that was the infographic. Here's their top acquisitions. Number 1, Motorola Mobility, $12.5 billion, 2012. This remains Google's largest acquisition to date. In October 2014, Motorola was sold to Lenovo for less than a quarter of its acquisition price, $2.9 billion. Number 2, Nest Labs, $3.2 billion, 2014. Marked Google's entry into the home automation space. Acquiring the connected thermostats and smoke detectors developer allowed Google to increase its household footprint while also providing expansion opportunities for its Android ecosystem. 3, $3.1 billion, 2007, DoubleClick, an ad-serving company, was Google's largest acquisition at the time and was intended to complement Google's existing ad business. The deal has been instrumental in giving Google a foothold in the lucrative display advertising industry, allowing the company to facilitate programmatic ad buying through its own exchange. Looker is a California-based business intelligence platform whose recent acquisition further signals Google's current focus on growing its cloud offerings. Announced in June 2019, the deal is expected to close by the end of the year. Fitbit is a global leader in consumer health wearables, is the most recent of Google's top 10 acquisitions. Google acquired the company about 4 years after Fitbit went public on the New York Stock Exchange. In 2018, Fitbit sold 14 million devices and had nearly 30 million active users worldwide. Google expects the acquisition to strengthen its Wear OS efforts as it attempts to catch up with Apple. 6, YouTube. This was in 2006 for $1.7 billion. YouTube, a leading video sharing platform, was Google's first $1 billion acquisition. Through this purchase, Google anticipated the shift from traditional media, like TV, and online viewing, while also increasing its traffic and growing its ad business. 7. Waze, an Israel-based mapping startup, brought social traffic data that helped Google improve Google Maps functions, such as accurately predicting travel time and suggesting navigation routes. HTC, Pixel smartphone division, a Taiwan-based consumer electronics manufacturer. While the acquisition did not include any production facilities, it left Google with a significant part of HTC's smartphone team, underlining the Android maker's focus on competing with iPhone maker Apple and helping Google establish a manufacturing presence in Taiwan. Almost done. AdMob in 2009, a mobile advertising company founded in 2006, was purchased by Google in anticipation of the massive proliferation of mobile ads. And ITA Software, a US-based IT and services provider, was acquired by Google to expand the tech giant's search capabilities and to power Google Flight Search. That's the top 10 acquisitions. Key takeaways. Google has spent nearly $29 billion on its top 10 acquisitions. Google's $12.5 billion acquisition of Motorola in 2012 was by far its largest deal. 8 of the top deals pictured had valuations greater than $1 billion, including marketing solutions provider DoubleClick and navigation app Waze. YouTube was Google's first $1 billion acquisition and remains its 6th largest deal. Those top deals reflect Google's strategy evolution from ad tech in the late 2000s to mobile and wearables in the 2010s. Okay, that was the article. I read to you because it's much better to listen to a native speaker read than to call on a student to read for the class. So who can help me answer these questions? What did you understand? If you want to answer, raise your hand, unmute yourself, click the hand icon button. You can answer and you can speak to me. So, number 1, what was Google's biggest acquisition? What was Google's biggest acquisition? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody answer what their biggest acquisition was? Anybody?
Hello.
Sure, Moro. Hi, nice to meet you, Moro. What was Google's biggest acquisition?
I think it was YouTube.
That was number 6. That was their 6th biggest acquisition. But what was their biggest one? Do you remember?
Oh, Motorola.
Yeah. Motorola. Very good. Thank you, Moro. Motorola was the biggest acquisition by far the biggest acquisition. Look how much more they spent on Motorola in all the way back in 2012. And 2 years later, they sold it for less than a quarter of its price. So in 2012, Google buys Motorola $12.5 billion. In 2014, they sell Motorola for $2.9 billion. So really, it was a terrible acquisition. In 2 years, Google lost $10 billion by acquiring Motorola. Awesome job, Moro. Number 2, explain Google's strategy in acquiring startups. Google's strategy in acquiring startups. Perla, could you maybe try to answer what seems to be their strategy in acquiring startups?
It's because I don't really have clear the meaning of startups.
Startups are these small companies that are purchased by large corporations like Google.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't really know the strategy. I only know that obviously through the years they they, I mean, it can be made some acquisitions. I mean, talking about different companies.
Yeah. Can you tell me what
But,
kinds of companies that they have acquired over the years? Like in what areas, in what domains would
um,
it? Yeah.
I think all of them are related to social, no, to let's say, I mean, they are related to social media. Can be media companies like. It's because one of them is, it was very important, the one that they acquired to improve Google Maps.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Great answer, Perla. So first, navigation. Navigation was, well, that was kind of second, right? So the first,
Uh-huh.
good job, Perla. Very good. The first thing
Thank
was
you.
marketing, right? And they did a lot of marketing early on because they anticipated that advertising on the internet would be very popular. Of course, that was correct. Advertising and marketing is extremely popular. It's one of the biggest industries. So first was marketing solutions, like in 2007, this old company DoubleClick. Um, then they got into navigation. They acquired this company Waze, and they've also shown that they want to get into video streaming like YouTube, right? So but you're right, Perla. It's all about the internet. It's all about technology, um, but especially marketing. And nowadays, and of course, mobile, like you said, mobile, the internet. That's why they got Motorola. And nowadays, it's wearables, things you are able to wear, like Fitbit. The Fitbit is the bracelet that you put on when you exercise, and it tracks your health and your fitness, your heart rate. It tracks your vital signs, and then it gives you that data in an app that you can analyze. So that's where they're moving now, and to wearable technology like the Fitbit. They also experimented with Google Glasses, so they're all over. But great job, excellent. And here's one more detailed question. How much has Google spent on its top 10 acquisitions? Does anybody recall how much Google has spent on their top 10 acquisitions? If you remember, you can just say it.
I remember that it was $298 billion. No, I don't really
Close.
know. I mean, but yes, 298 billion.
Um, Reduce that by 10 times. So 29.
Oh,
29 billion. Yeah.
29.
But
Okay, okay.
that's just its top
Oh, yeah.
10 acquisitions. That's just the top 10. I mean, they have acquired many
Mhm.
startups, but on just the top 10, they have spent $29 billion alone. Okay, so
Okay.
that's the comprehension part. So every lesson I'm going to do some kind of comprehension. The comprehension is based in part on the video lesson before. So if you haven't watched the video, that's okay. Please watch it so you understand fully. But I'm also going to always give you time to speak. There's always going to be a chance to produce the language. So I want to talk about this. Question A. If you could launch a new company or business, what kind of company or business would you launch? So second conditional grammar uses the vocabulary from the video, which is very important for business. Launch means start. The same way you launch a rocket into outer space, you can launch a company. On your question, Perla. So you had a question, and it's a very good opportunity for me to explain something. So your question was about like, what is a startup? So I want to show you like what it is. So basically a startup is a new company that was just there, I'll say here, recently started, right? You know, it's a new company, a startup. So here we're using it as a noun. But let's look at how it evolved, because this will help you understand grammar and phrasal verbs. So look at this sentence. I started up my own business. This is a common way for Americans to speak. And if you realize, look at this, it has the same meaning as I started my own business. So these sentences have exactly the same meaning. Why do we have this particle on the phrasal verb start up? It's just because it's very common for English speakers to use phrasal verbs. We use phrasal verbs so often that sometimes we just add particles to the end of a verb. So start up means the same thing as start. It's just sometimes people say start up. Oh, I'm gonna start it up. I'm gonna start it. It means exactly the same thing, but it's very common in English to use phrasal verbs. They mean the same thing. So this is how it evolves. This is the business I started up. People will say it like this. This is the business I started up. I started up my own business. And then that eventually evolved to this is my start up. So if you look at this, here it is now a noun. At the end, it's become a noun. It started as a verb, a phrasal verb. And this is really common in English, and not only English, many languages, Romance languages, other languages. Something starts as a verb, it evolves to become a noun, and vice versa. Things start as nouns and they become verbs. But what's important to recognize is that this here is a noun. It's two words connected by a hyphen, but it functions as a noun. And to understand English at a little bit more advanced, profound level, try to look at and understand the evolution from phrasal verb to noun, right? So that's what startup means, and that's how it evolved from that phrasal verb. Is it common to negotiate in your country? In what situations would you negotiate with somebody? So if you're not sure of the word negotiate, this is a strategy I use anytime I'm learning a language. It's a pretty basic strategy, but it's called a dictionary, English to English dictionary. Do not translate the word right away. Translation is not really going to help you. Our Spanish speakers recognize this word very easily, I think, because as you can see, it comes from Latin. It started off in the early 17th century, and it means to obtain or bring about by discussion. So a negotiation is a discussion where you try to reach an agreement or compromise. Usually you negotiate price. So maybe I sell apples. I sell my apples at the market, and my apples are $5 for my apples. And you come to the market and you negotiate with me. And you tell me, oh, Jonathan, I'll give you $2 for your apples. And I say, no, my apples are $5. And you say, no, I'll give you $2. And I say, okay, $3.50. And then we agree on a deal, and I sell my apples for $3.50. That was a negotiation. We negotiated the price. So Moro, I'll ask you because you're the new student. Is it common to negotiate in? You're from Argentina, I believe. Is it common to negotiate in Argentina? And in what situations would you negotiate with someone?
Sometimes when I want to buy something on Facebook, and
Mm-hmm.
there is how to call it, but it's like a section of Facebook called Marketplace, and I go
Yes.
there and I look for some items to buy and
Mm.
discuss the prices.
Yeah.
Prices.
So you negotiate on Facebook Marketplace.
Yes.